When I predicted that we would get an XCOM game in 2020, this is not quite what I had in mind. Since reviving the series, Firaxis and 2K have tried expanding beyond the roots of the series before, but their first attempt at a spin-off didn't go all that well. Attempt number 2 then diverges from the main series in a few key ways but keeps the strategy roots, and overall that makes it a worthwhile game to pick up if you want some more XCOM in your life. So long as you're not expecting XCOM 3, which this game is not in any way trying to be, I think you'll be satisfied with the resulting game. XCOM Chimera Squad came pretty much out of nowhere. The game was announced a little more than a week before its official release on April 24th, 2020, exclusively to the PC. The game was developed by Firaxis Games and published by 2K Games, which has been the case for both mainline games since the series revival in 2012. For XCOM Chimera Squad, many members of the XCOM 2 design team came over, with Mark Nauta taking the role of lead designer. As for the game itself, it is a turn-based strategy game but has several new mechanics and design choices that differentiate it from the mainline games. These deviations include, but are not limited to, an interleaved turn system instead of the one-side moves then the other side moves seen in standard XCOM, non-randomized soldiers with full voice acting, and no permadeath. On the whole, the game was fairly positively received, with most liking the fast-paced encounters and changes throwing twists into the usual gameplay loop, but some fans and critics felt it took away some of what made the series special. I will admit to having a reaction similar to the disappointed fans upon the announcement, but I think if you look at the game for what it is and not what it isn't, XCOM 3, there's a lot to enjoy with this new title. I mean, just fighting with the aliens' abilities is fun enough. I did say you could use the aliens on your team, right? No? Well, surprise, and it's fun. But what's the setup for Chimera Squad? Chimera Squad takes place after XCOM 2, when XCOM overthrew Advent and returned control of Earth to humans. This action, though, left many aliens and hybrids on Earth, and the Earth governments decided not to throw them all off the planet, since many had integrated and were not responsible for the atrocities of Advent. Unsurprisingly, though, the various aliens, hybrids, and humans are at loggerheads, with mistrust coming from all sides. City 31, the site of the game's events, is a battleground as an experimental city made to prove that humans, aliens, and hybrids could coexist in the same city. At the start of the game, Chimera Squad has arrived in City 31 to assist in stabilizing the fractured city. Unfortunately, on their very first mission, the mayor of City 31 is killed in a terrorist attack. Chimera Squad's job then becomes, in addition to trying to keep the city from tearing itself apart, discovering who killed Mayor Nightingale and why. Their focus is on 3 criminal factions that you take on over the course of the campaign. The Progeny is a cult with psionic powers, Grey Phoenix is a group of aliens seeking to leave Earth as they are convinced that there is no place for them here, and finally Sacred Coil, a group of former Advent soldiers continuing their efforts against XCOM. The game's local focus compared to the global focus of most XCOM games allows City 31 to feel more like an actual location, and therefore the missions you undertake to protect it gain more meaning. It's not all that original storytelling, but that's not generally XCOM's forte anyway, so I think it is sufficient to get some investment from me and justify the gameplay. Your squad with which you'll be fighting consists of many different soldiers, some humans, some aliens, and some hybrids, but all of them are distinct characters. You gather more of them, expanding your squad over the course of the game and granting you options to use for your missions. Since they are distinct people, I guess I should talk about how they are as characters. My opinion is, meh. It's really hard to get too much character development when pretty much their only lines are small lines of banter popping up mainly in between missions. The voice actors do a lot to give them personality in those few lines, but they aren't exactly what I would call well fleshed out. This isn't unexpected, given how XCOM has dealt with distinct characters before in XCOM Enemy Unknown and XCOM 2, but it would have been nice if they could have given more interactions to increase emotional investment. While they may not be distinct personality-wise, gameplay-wise they very much are, with a lot of unique abilities that you can test and find synergies for when deploying them in battle. This is the area where I think the game shines the most, especially as you promote the soldiers and get new abilities to play with. Most of the gameplay is in standard XCOM style, turn-based encounters with percentage-based abilities. The biggest change is the breach mode system. Every time you start a mission, you have to breach the location, lining up your team of up to 4 soldiers at various points of entry that give bonuses or restrictions when you finally breach the area. Some access points are limited to characters with certain abilities or equipment, and it's the first strategic aspect that will help dictate how the battle will go. Once the breach happens, you'll get the chance to take some shots against the enemies who can be either surprised, alert, or aggressive to your approach. Surprised enemies do nothing after you complete your breach shots. Alert enemies can do a single action such as moving or hunkering down, and aggressive enemies get their own shots at you. This stage happens for every encounter in a mission, which can range from 1 to 4 encounters, though the latter amount is rare. In between encounters, your soldiers will reload and heal up to your specified setting, ranging from not healing at all between encounters to fully healing after every encounter. I really liked this aspect because it allows for some additional difficulty management beyond the standard difficulty modes. For the actual battles that occur after you breach, since usually you can't take out all the enemies in one breach, there are also some changes from the standard XCOM battles. These changes start with the aforementioned interleaved turns between you and the enemies. That means after one of your soldiers moves, you might have another of your soldiers move, or you might have 3 enemies, which changes up your whole strategy for that character. The turn order bar becomes an increasing focus, both in preventing enemies' turns and in getting your team more chances. Unlike regular XCOM, permadeath is not a thing. If a character bleeds out before they're stabilized, you fail the mission and have to start over. Since the missions aren't long though, this thankfully doesn't break the action too much. The game also gives you the option now to knock enemies unconscious instead of killing them. If you do knock them unconscious, you get the chance to gain more of the intel resource, so it can be worthwhile to do if you're running low. All of these aspects lead to quick, fast-paced, intense strategic battles, which I had a lot of fun playing. Since these missions are quick, I can even describe XCOM Chimera Squad as a good pick-up-and-play game, which I never thought I'd say about an XCOM game. Outside of battle, there are a lot of familiar aspects for XCOM veterans. You accept missions across the various districts in the city from the city map. Each district has unrest that builds if you don't complete missions there, or if one of the enemy factions is getting up to mischief. If a district reaches maximum unrest and stays there, the city itself starts building up points towards city anarchy. If city anarchy hits the max level, you lose. Careful selection of missions then is crucial to managing unrest and also figuring out what rewards you need to complete in order to build up your resources, such as supplies for items, intel for the scavenger market and field teams, or Illyrium for research. One of the things you can do to reduce unrest and gain more resources is creating and improving field teams that can be deployed in various districts. Other things you can do at the base include promoting and equipping soldiers, training soldiers to improve their stats or get rid of scars that they can get when wounded in battle, conducting special ops for resources or gameplay benefits, and researching various technologies. All of these things are pretty easy to accomplish with a few clicks though, so it doesn't take you too long to get back into the action. On the whole, the campaign is a streamlined and enjoyable 20 hours with a lot of action going on the entire time. On the presentation front, XCOM Chimera Squad is basically the same design as XCOM 2, and the music aids in the environmental design but doesn't do too much otherwise. Mainly, the presentation hasn't changed from XCOM 2, and that's fine. The only difference is the rare graphic comic-esque cutscenes. The other thing Chimera Squad has differently from XCOM 2 is a marked increase in voice acting for everyone from the director and Whisper, aka the Bradford replacement, to the soldiers. The voice acting, as I said before, is good at creating character with the few character moments they are allowed to have. Nothing in the presentation really stands out, although the UI itself is very easy to understand for anyone who's played an XCOM game before. It's functional, but not spectacular. Functional is unfortunately not always a word that can be used to describe the game itself, however, as bugs have been reported consistently since launch. During my playthrough, my game crashed on only one occasion, but there were moments of slowdowns and freezes that took maybe a minute to resolve before moving on. In this sense, it is comparable to how XCOM 2 was during the early days after launch. Firaxis eventually got XCOM 2 to the point where I can play a full playthrough with none of those problems. However, it's too early to tell if that will become the case for XCOM Chimera Squad, and it's unfortunate that the bug issues have not been resolved even after they launched a major patch a few weeks after release. XCOM Chimera Squad is not what many fans were expecting, but is very good for what it is. That doesn't mean I want XCOM 3 to be more like Chimera Squad, but the XCOM series of games I think benefits from having a fun side game like this one. The game introduces some clever new ideas and delivers a lot of strategic battles to wrestle with at a very reasonable price. This time, I think the spin-off paid off, and gave us an action-packed strategic game to help scratch the XCOM itch as we await the next mainline game. Please leave a like to combat the growing anarchy of the YouTube algorithm, comment below about pretty much anything, it all helps people find the video and the channel, and subscribe for more XCOM and video game content. Have a great day, and happy gaming!